One. Hey guys, it's Caden. Welcome to another Autism Digest interview. Before we begin, and I wanted to bring this person on because the legacy of Tom Kane was a major part of my childhood. So I figured it was only right that I bring on someone who's worked with him directly, the voice of
Yeah.
Blossom, and many other characters you probably grew up with, Catherine Cavadini. Thanks for coming on, Catherine.
Thank you, Caden. I so appreciate you having me on. That's
Of
wonderful.
course.
I love that you're doing kind of an homage to Tom Kane, who was one of my favorite people on the planet. Just the kindest, most genuine person you'd ever want to meet. Um, we spent a lot of years together working together, and the Powerpuff Girls were pretty much a family, to each other. We all had our children during that time. We had our babies. We brought our children to sessions and, saw each other throughout the years and, became friends. I really love his wife, Cindy. She's an amazing person. I know, I've seen his kids, most of them grow up, not the younger ones, but the older ones. And, he's going to be sorely missed. There were so many people that his life touched, and I think we've seen evidence of that with all the outpouring of love and all of the messages people have been putting on Instagram and Facebook and different social media about how much he affected their lives because he was so prolific. It wasn't just our show. But, I've had people say that, the father figure of the Powerpuff Girls was so instrumental in their lives because they said I had never really even thought about it while we were recording the show, but some people, grew up without a mom. And they said that, it was similar situation where the dad had to do everything. And I remember seeing an episode just recently where the professor's like wearing an apron and, cleaning and doing all of that stuff and trying to get the Powerpuff Girls to clean their room and stuff. And it was just so cute. And I can't even imagine, anyone besides him doing that voice because he was so amazing. Plus, he did, him in the series, which was, probably one of the most iconic villains. And I remember when he first came up with a voice, all of us were like, oh, because he'd go from that super high voice into the low, thing. And anyway, he was brilliant, and we're going to miss him so much. I'm so grateful that we got to see him you know, pretty recently since his stroke. I hadn't seen him. And we did that Comic-Con together at Lexington. And so we kind of had a little reunion and we were looking forward to doing some more together. But I guess God had other plans. So.
Exactly. Losing Tom, I would say, honestly, left a giant hole in animation. So, I'm glad I was able to bring you on.
Yeah.
Anyways, let's get down to business. A lot of people definitely know you. Who hasn't heard of Powerpuff Girls? But for those that may not know you, do you mind telling a bit of your story in your own words?
Oh, goodness. Well, I think that most people know me from Blossom, from the Powerpuff Girls. I think that's one of the most uh, well-known voices that I've done. I also did Tanya Mauskowitz in American Tail, Fievel Goes West, which is something that's a while ago, but it had some beautiful songs in it that I got to sing, and I got to work with the late James Horner, which was an amazing experience. Um, and then I years ago did a little series called Gem and the Holograms, where I played kind of my first villain, I mean, she really was not that good at being a villain, but Clash was the character that I played in that. And so those are kind of the three characters that a lot of people know that I've done, but um, they can always go to my website, catherinecavadini.com. I've got my bio there, and I have a lot of pictures of characters that they may not know I've done. Yeah, so I've been doing this for over 40 years for a living doing voiceover, and it's been an incredible experience. I still do it to this day, and I also I do all sorts of things like audiobooks, and I just started doing narration. I did something called the narration for a documentary called Condor Canyon, which I'm pretty proud of. A beautiful documentary um, about condors and uh, trying to, it's a conservation society. It put it on, and they spend a lot of time trying to save the condors in California. So that was a beautiful experience that I had recently. And then I do a lot of dubbing. I do a lot of ADR and looping, which I don't know if people know about that, but it's, sometimes it's listed as additional voices. So I work all the time, and I'm grateful that I get to do this silly job for a living. uh,
And we're grateful for the legacy you left
oh,
with
thank you.
us. And I honestly didn't know that looping was the additional voices cast section. I've seen it a couple of times, and I've always wondered why they don't just credit them as the characters, which
Right.
transitions beautifully into my next question for you. When your daughter first got diagnosed as being on the autism spectrum, what
Mhm.
was your first reaction?
Well, I think we were worried because, the school was, there were some things that were she wasn't testing well. She was having some trouble, like trying to spending a lot of time in the bathroom because I think she was struggling, to deal with the school. And uh, I guess it wasn't very good because the first real diagnosis that we got, the person who did the assessment, basically, my ex-husband said, "So the lights are going to turn on for her," and she said, "No, they're not." And that was shocking to me, because now I look at my daughter and she's doing wonderfully. She's works at PetSmart as a groomer. She's happy. She's in a relationship. She has friendships. Plus, my daughter doesn't really present as if she's had problems. And she's also, I think now that she's 27, some of her brain has developed more. And we did a lot of a lot of therapies, a lot of different therapies. I did like everything under the sun that you could do. Um, and so, now she's got a daughter. She's a wonderful mother. And so I have a granddaughter who's 2 years old. So I like to tell that story in a sense because, when you're in it, when your child is younger, you're told all these different things and you're given all these different names for diagnosis. And that's not who your child is at all. And I would say take all those with a grain of salt. I mean, do all the therapies you can and try to, help them as much as you can, follow their passions, because I think my daughter was an amazing artist. She drew this picture when she was in third grade at school. Of this penguin mother and a baby penguin, and the teacher was like, "If I hadn't seen her draw this, I would have thought you drew it." Like if I hadn't actually witnessed her drawing this. And she's always had that talent, just being able to. So I would say, focus on your child's strengths, and also know that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. I read a little bit about your story. I mean, same thing, right? Your parents just never gave up on you, and they just kept supporting you and giving you what you needed. And look at you now, so I think that, it is a little devastating at first when you first get the diagnosis, and then you buck up and you go, okay, now what do we do? Right. So,
Exactly.
yeah.
It's had some, and I'm glad your daughter's crossing it now.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
myself want to have kids one day, but unfortunately, I need to establish my own place first, a living situation specifically, and then I can go from there. Speaking
Right.
of misconceptions, are there misconceptions about autism that you encountered frequently and wished people better understood in society?
Well, you know what? One thing that helped me was I have a very dear friend who is a voiceover artist who I've worked with since he was 19. And when I first met him, I thought, oh my God, like he was so, I thought arrogant. But of course, now that I know him, he's brilliant, so he does know a lot of stuff. And like we used to, like when we work, our boss required us to have notes. Well, he has a didactic memory. his notes are all in his head. He has to look at a book once and he's had it memorized, and actually there's a problem there because he has so much information stored that it's a difficult thing in one way. But in another way, now he's one of my dearest friends. I love him so much. And I would talk to him and I would ask him a lot of questions about, what his perspective, being somebody who's high functioning on the spectrum. And so he basically schooled me and so gave me a very deep understanding of not only his experience but also how to help my daughter. And I think there are a lot of people out there and he's actually my vocal coach, like as he teaches dialects, so he's my dialect coach. He's brilliant in that way. He's got an amazing ear and just a very high level of he teaches a workshop now. His name is Aaron Fours, I should say, because if anyone wants a great dialect coach for voiceovers, he's the best in the world. So he teaches a workshop, and just witnessing him teach other people and just dialing in on the exact thing, and I think because of the way his mind works, he's able to do that, dial into just the exact thing that would help somebody, just get the accent, honed in. So, yeah. So I think that was really helpful for me, and also reading a lot of information. I think, my daughter's 27 now, so I think there's more information now and people are more understanding and accepting. And, there's a lot of people, and I think this is why you wanted to do this interview, but a lot of our fans are on the spectrum, and a lot of people on the spectrum really are drawn to animation and games, characters, and those worlds. And I remember speaking once at a friend of mine. She was a fourth grade teacher, and she asked me to come speak to her class. And she had one student who had a shadow. And she said her student had never spoken until I came and spoke to the class, but she loved animation so much that she came up and talked to me. She was just amazing, and it just opened her up. So I think that, that's one avenue that can really open children on the spectrum up is, finding something that they like that. And I see the parents that come and bring their child or their older child even, that they're still taking care of to Comic-Cons. And, that's a wonderful thing to do. Like if you can just nurture that part of them, their passions and the things that they love, I think that's the best thing you can do. I hope I answered your question.
You did, and,
Okay.
and you answered another one I was going to ask about representation. The big thing we can do to improve it is consulting with these individuals, considering what someone who's neurodivergent might be into and applying it to those projects. With
Right.
speaking of voiceover, transitioning into that for a bit, has your experience as a parent changed the way you approach storytelling and character development in your voice acting career?
Oh, absolutely. It's you know sometimes you're imagining who you're talking to, and because you've had a child, or like even with my granddaughter, I can imagine that I'm talking to her, depending on, because when you're an actor, sometimes you pick a person that you're talking to. So yeah, and just kind of understanding children, I think, and understanding your family, I think is valuable as an actor. um yeah.
I would agree, and I think that can be applied to any industry, really. I know, sure, with me, a bit of a story for you. Yeah, one of my favorite things about doing these interviews is you never know who you get to talk to and whose story you get to air. And one person specifically I was trying to get for a good long while, was Nicholas Rico, who's the White House press secretary, or his
Oh,
husband.
wow.
And I specifically wanted to talk to him about real estate and how to help autistic individuals who might be looking for a place navigate that. And I sent him my standard email and text, the same one I might have sent you. Yeah, and I waited a week, followed up, waited a week, followed up, and then he finally texted me, "Hey, don't text this number anymore," which at the time I took as rude. But one thing, hey, that doing these has taught me is not to be too see, and to be more socially aware. So I absolutely can relate to your experiences.
Right.
Speaking of
No, that is a funny thing because I think that's very uh, common with people who are on the spectrum. Like my daughter would be like, "Mom, you didn't respond to me." I'm like, that was like 5 minutes ago, honey. You got to give people time. Or she'll be like, my friend didn't call. She didn't respond to my text. I'm like, you give it a day, like, take a breath. They probably saw it. They might be busy, like you just, you got to wait. But I think that is a wonderful, thing that you learned. And that, I have noticed sometimes when people contact me, I can kind of tell sometimes if someone does a little too many emails before I've responded, which you did not do with me. But I'm also, I understand it. So it's not like I get upset or anything about it. Because I get it. It can seem like forever to
yeah,
that somebody's
exactly,
responding, right? So
and to be fair to him, he's literally the husband of someone who helps run a whole country. So of course he's
right,
going to be super super busy. So I'm
right.
definitely glad you get that, which transitions beautifully into my next question. Tom Kane's journey highlighted the importance of adapting to life when communication abilities change. Do you see any parallels between that experience and the communication challenges many autistic individuals navigate?
Well, maybe. I just know that, when I saw him last, I happened to have a virus before I went to the Comic-Con that we were at. And I thought, should I travel? Should I not? But I didn't want to. I just really wanted to be there because all three of the Powerpuff Girls and Tom was going to be there. And I finally thought, okay, I'm good enough to fly. I feel like I'm okay. I was taking pseudoephedrine. And then on Friday, I was just fine, talked all day and then all of a sudden my voice completely went away, and I couldn't speak above a whisper, which has never happened in my whole life. And so the next day when Tom came, I was like, I can't talk, and he was like me too, kind of thing. And I thought, I remember when I found out that he had this stroke, and I thought, he can't now he can't speak. And like, our whole life is about speaking and using our instrument, and our identities are so um, you know, it's so built in that, as voiceover artists. And, I've even known, children that didn't speak for a couple of years, like even my stepson. He's not on the spectrum, but he didn't speak for a long time. Apparently, I met him at 5, but my husband said that he didn't speak till he was around 3, and then when he did, he spoke in full sentences. So he was just, it wasn't that he couldn't speak, he was just waiting. And he said something like, oh, I can't remember, but it was a full sentence, So so you don't know when it's going to hit. And also my friend, Aaron, who is very high functioning, he didn't speak for many, for years, and they didn't know what was going on. And the same thing with him. Now he's like prolific. He speaks for a living, so you just don't know, what's going on behind that. You don't know. So I mean, I would say just to always have hope and keep keep working at it, and you don't know where the child is at and what's going on exactly inside their head, or whether they may have the ability. They're just choosing not to, for whatever reason. So, like my daughter had some hearing difficulties when there's a lot of noise. She can't hear specific voice maybe in that. So I remember, we were at her school, and she played a role in she played Dorothy in Wizard of Oz. She was the lead in the musical. And one of the teachers said, in this big crowd, she said, "Oh, you were so wonderful, Alice." And Alice didn't even respond at all. And I thought, oh my gosh, Alice, why didn't you say thank you or so, And she didn't hear it, that's why. And so then I had her hearing tested and found out she had, a hearing issue, so which we're aware of now. And I think it's a little better now, but we know that, when she's in a loud environment, that's not the optimal environment for her to be in.
I definitely can relate, and I'm definitely one who didn't love accommodations either, but failed me. And I was lucky enough to have a strong support system who was super duper empathetic, which
Right.
transitions into my last question for you. What can families in the autism community learn from Tom Kane's resilience and determination?
Well, I know that he worked very hard, to and was very excited. Cindy, his wife, said when he came to the Comic-Con that she'd never seen him smile so much, and he had worked really hard to be able to sign his signature again. And they weren't sure. They were like, we're not sure. You can come up and talk to him, but we're not sure if he's going to be able to sign or not. So he had like a stamp that he was going to maybe use, but he was able to do it, and I know he worked really hard to get that skill back, so I think that, when you look at somebody who is older, and is trying to rebuild, like autistic children aren't rebuilding, they're just building it, right? But he already had it and then lost it, which is it's a little bit of a different situation, but he also, kept trying and was working at it, and he was going to be hopefully doing more, but obviously he's not going to be now because God wanted him. So we can't argue with that one. So
We definitely can, and that's why I respect him so much. That's because these are the type of stories we love to spotlight on here.
right.
Anyways, let's do it for the same of you guys. Thank you so much to Catherine for coming on and sharing her perspectives. If you guys want to see more amazing interviews, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the Autism Digest channel. Pick up our latest issues centered around the arts by going to autismdigest.com and stay tuned for the audio file to be posted on our Spotify. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.